A nanny was hired to care for the son of a millionaire, but when she arrived at the house, she was paralyzed to see that the millionaire was her husband, declared dead 7 years ago. "Hello, it's Uncle Joel. Come along with me to the very end, and I promise you will be delighted, thrilled, and inspired by this amazing story. Enjoy." The wind blew hard that morning, carrying with it the salty smell of the ocean and the echo of memories Marissa tried to forget. 7 years had passed, but some wounds never fully healed. On that beach where Caden now played in the sand without a care, Marissa's life had been destroyed. It was there that she received the news that Daniel, the great love of her life, had died in a boating accident. She still remembered the despair, the shock, the emptiness that settled inside her when she learned she would never see him again. Pregnant and helpless, she had to reinvent herself, learn to survive alone, raising her son with all the love she could offer, even if her own heart was in pieces. Caden ran to her, his brown hair tousled by the wind, the innocent smile lighting up his face. "Mom, look at the castle I made," he said proudly, pointing to the sand construction. Marissa smiled, kneeling to take a look. "It's amazing, my love. You really have a talent for this." He laughed, satisfied, and went back to playing while she adjusted her hair as the cold breeze cut across her face. Mornings in Charleston still carried a crispness that contrasted with the warmth of the afternoons. Marissa looked at the sea for a moment, lost in thought. That's when her phone vibrated in the pocket of her jacket. She answered without much enthusiasm. "Hello? Marissa Bennett? Yes, this is she. This is Claire Reynolds, assistant to Mr. Alan Monroe. We're looking for a nanny for a 6-year-old boy, and your recommendation came highly. We'd like to know if you're available for an interview." Marissa furrowed her brow. It wasn't common to receive offers so directly. "Well, I'd need to know more details. The salary is excellent, and the employer prefers to discuss conditions in person. If you accept, the interview can be today at his residence. Where is it?" "Charleston." The name of the city seemed to weigh on Marissa's shoulders. She had spent years avoiding this place. Although she had tried to move on, Charleston was still an open wound. But work was work. She needed to provide for Caden. "All right, you can send me the address shortly after." With Caden left in the care of a trusted neighbor, Marissa rented a car and followed the coastal highway. The route, flanked by the vast blue of the Atlantic and the beauty of the shoreline vegetation, made her heart tighten. How many times had she driven that road with Daniel at her side? How could everything have changed so much? She arrived at the address given and stood open-mouthed. The mansion was a true monument to luxury, with tall wrought-iron gates and a modern, imposing facade. A long stone path led to the main entrance, bordered by perfectly manicured gardens. Before she could reflect on what awaited her, the door opened, revealing an elegant, well-dressed woman. "Marissa?" "I'm Claire, Mr. Monroe's assistant. Please come in." Marissa crossed the entrance hall, impressed by the refinement of the bay place. The gleaming floor reflected the warm lights of the immense crystal chandelier. The woody scent of the fine furniture mingled with the subtle aroma of fresh coffee. Every detail of the mansion exuded wealth, but something in that environment sent a chill down her spine. The glass door at the back opened, and the moment she raised her eyes, the ground seemed to vanish beneath her feet. Standing there in front of her was Daniel. The shock was so strong that her entire body froze. Her heart raced, her breath snagged in her throat. He was alive. Alive. Marissa blinked, hoping her mind was playing a trick on her, but it wasn't. Daniel stood there a few yards away, wearing an impeccable suit, with the same intense gaze and steady posture he had always had. But something was wrong. He showed no sign of recognition. "Are you the candidate for the position?" His voice was firm but cold. The question hit Marissa like a blow. He didn't recognize her, the man she loved, with whom she had dreamed of building a family, with whom she had lived the best moments of. Her life now looked at her as if she were a complete stranger. Her stomach turned, her legs wavered. "Mr. Monroe." Claire looked from one to the other, noticing the strange silence between them. Marissa held her breath. Monroe. Since when did Daniel have that last name? A wave of questions began to take over her mind. How could he be here? How could he be alive after so long? And why was he acting as if he had never seen her before? Taking a deep breath, she fought to pull herself together. She couldn't lose control. If she showed any emotion now, she could put everything at risk. She forced herself to remain calm and answered, her voice a little shaky. "Yes. That's me." Daniel nodded without expressing any emotion. "Great. We can talk in the office." He turned and walked ahead, unaware of the storm of feelings he had left behind. Marissa felt her hands sweat and her throat tighten. Her heart beat too hard inside her chest. She wanted to run, to scream, to demand what was happening. But instead she forced herself to take a step forward. Each step was a battle against fear. She entered the office, and seeing Daniel sit behind the desk, she realized this was her chance. No matter what was happening there, she would find out the truth. Marissa felt her heart hammering in her chest as she entered the office. The space was wide, with dark wood shelves full of books, a corner fireplace unlit, and a huge glass window that looked out over the ocean. But none of that mattered. The only thing her mind could process was Daniel's presence there, seated across from her, alive. Every feature of his face was exactly as she remembered. The striking eyes, the firm jaw, the way he tilted his head when observing someone. But something about him seemed different. A chill in his expression, a void that didn't match the man she had known. The silence between them lasted seconds, but for Marissa it seemed like eternity. Daniel finally broke the tension. "Claire told me you have a lot of experience with children." His voice, though familiar, sounded distant, almost mechanical. Marissa drew a deep breath, trying to find her own voice. Her whole body was on alert, a mix of shock, anger, and confusion. "Yes. I've worked as a nanny for a few years. Besides that, I'm a mother, so I have both professional and personal experience." Daniel just nodded, studying her carefully. "My son, Ryan, is 6. I need someone who's firm but patient. He can be a little stubborn sometimes." Marissa barely managed to react. Ryan. The word echoed in her mind. A 6-year-old boy, the same age as her son Caden. A strange feeling came over her, but there was no way to fit all the puzzle pieces together now. Everything was happening too fast. "I understand," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Children need balance, authority and affection in the right measure." Daniel leaned back in the chair, arms crossed. His eyes examined every detail of her. "Have you worked for a wealthy family before?" The question caught Marissa off guard. Yes, a few. It was true. Despite her modest life, she had worked for several affluent families in recent years. But none of them had prepared her for this, for standing before the man she loved and seeing him act as if they had never shared a life. Her chest burned with 1,000 questions, but the only thing she managed to ask was, "What happened to Ryan's mother?" Daniel hesitated for a moment. "She passed away a few years ago." It was a brief answer, but it made Marissa's stomach turn. The only woman who should have been by his side, was her. The lump in Marissa's throat tightened. It was surreal to be there, listening to those words. He was alive. He had a son. And he seemed to believe his life had always been this way. The urge to scream, to confront him, was overwhelming. But she held back. She couldn't break down. Not yet. "I'm sorry," she said, lowering her eyes to hide the avalanche of emotions. Daniel seemed uncomfortable with the conversation and looked to Claire. "Can you bring Ryan?" "I want to see how he interacts with Marissa." Claire nodded and left the room. The silence that followed was heavy. Marissa felt Daniel's gaze on her, studying her. How could he not remember her? How was it possible? She decided to take a risk. "Have you lived here long?" she asked casually. Daniel frowned slightly, as if he hadn't expected the question. 6 years. Marissa held her breath. 6 years. Exactly the time he had been missing. Before she could say anything else, Claire returned, accompanied by a little boy. Marissa felt the air leave her lungs. Ryan was a perfect copy of Daniel. Brown hair, strong features, even the determined way he walked. But what really made her tremble was the boy's look. That was her son's look. It was like she had been punched in the stomach. She needed all her strength not to fall to her knees right there. Ryan looked at her with curiosity, but kept a serious face. "Hi, Ryan," Daniel said in a gentler tone than he used with adults. "This is Marissa. She might be your new nanny." The boy didn't respond right away. He studied Marissa with attentive eyes, as if trying to decipher her. "Hi," he said at last, his voice soft but wary. Marissa's heart was racing. She wanted to grab that boy, hold him in her arms, and never let him go. She wanted to tell him she was his mother, that everything had been a lie, that he belonged with her. But all she could do was smile. "Hi, Ryan. Do you know how to bake cake?" he asked suddenly. The question caught Marissa by surprise. "I do." What flavor do you like?" "Chocolate," he answered immediately, a sparkle in his eyes. She laughed softly. "What a coincidence. It's my favorite too." The boy's face softened. For the first time, he didn't seem so suspicious. Daniel watched the scene with interest. "Looks like you two already get along," he commented. A shiver ran through Marissa's spine. If only he knew. She didn't yet know how, but she would find the truth, and when she did, nothing and no one would keep her from getting her son back. Marissa felt her heart pounding in her chest as she looked at Ryan. The boy, unaware of the storm of emotions swallowing her, observed her with curiosity. His eyes, so familiar, left her breathless. It was impossible to deny it. He was her child. She fought to keep her expression neutral. Her instinct screamed to hold him and say he never should have been taken from her. But for now she needed to restrain herself. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Ryan asked suddenly. Marissa smiled, trying to appear natural. "I love them. My son does too. He has a collection of minifigures." The boy's eyes shone. "Really? I have one too. What's his favorite?" "The T-Rex, but he always says the Velociraptor is smarter." Ryan laughed, shaking his head. "The T-Rex is the best. He's huge and eats anything." His laughter was like a knife in Marissa's chest. It was Daniel's laughter. She needed all her strength not to crumble. The knot in her throat tightened even more when she thought of Caden. Her son had grown up without his twin brother, without even knowing he existed. Daniel watched the conversation with a neutral look. For him, it was just an interview. For Marissa, it was the most real moment of her life. "And you, Ryan? What do you like to do?" The boy made a face, thinking. "I like to draw." She smiled. "I bet you draw really well." He shrugged. "Dad says I'm good, but I need to practice more." That sentence made her heart stop for a second. Daniel said the same thing to Caden when he drew. She looked at Daniel. He had no idea what was happening. He was calm and confident. "What do you think of her, Ryan?" he asked his son. Ryan shrugged. "She seems nice." Daniel nodded, looking at Marissa. "I believe we can do a trial. You start tomorrow morning." Tomorrow she would be in that house, next to her child. Marissa kept her voice steady, even though she felt she could faint at any moment. "All right." Ryan looked at his father and tugged his hand. "Can I play outside?" "You can, son." The boy ran out, and Marissa followed him with her eyes, feeling herself sink deeper into the reality she had just discovered. That child was hers. 6 years away from him, 6 years being raised by someone else while she mourned her husband and tried to survive. How had this happened? How had Ryan been torn from her arms? She needed to find the truth. When she turned back, she realized Daniel was watching her carefully. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Marissa drew a deep breath. "No, I just like children." He nodded, but his expression showed something intrigued him. "You look familiar." Marissa's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Daniel frowned, as if trying to recall something. "I don't know. Your face, it's like I've seen you before." Her heart sped up. He was remembering. Some part of him still recognized her. "Maybe it's just an impression," she answered quickly. "I've worked as a nanny for years. I might have crossed paths with you before." He was silent for a few seconds, then shook his head. "Maybe." There was something in him still clinging to the past. "Mr. Monroe, may I ask you something?" He raised an eyebrow. "Of course." She hesitated for a moment. "How did you lose your wife?" His eyes hardened. The question clearly bothered him. "It was many years ago. An accident. The word sounded like thunder in Marissa's mind, the same fate that supposedly took Daniel, the same explanation they'd given for his death. But now he stood there, alive. What if Yvette had lied about that too? Daniel shut down, signaling he didn't want to continue. Claire will give you all the job details. I'll see you tomorrow. Marissa nodded and said goodbye, but inside her a storm was forming. Daniel was alive. Ryan was her son, and someone had lied to them. She left the mansion with weak legs, walked to the car and gripped the steering wheel, trying to breathe. She needed to process it all. "Mum?" Caden's voice echoed through the phone, bringing her back to reality. "Hi, my love. How was your day?" "Good. Aunt Vera took me to the park." She smiled, but inside she felt the weight of truth. How would she tell him he had a twin brother? She couldn't rush. First, she needed to gather all the pieces. But one thing was certain, she would make Yvette pay for everything. Marissa woke before the alarm went off. In truth, she barely slept that night. The images of the previous day replayed in her mind like an endless film. Daniel was alive. Her son was there within reach. She sat on the edge of the bed and ran her hands over her face. The weight of the truth crushed her. How was it possible that Ryan had been torn from her and raised as an orphan? How could Daniel have spent 6 years living a life that wasn't his, without remembering anything? She felt her breathing quicken. Calm. She got up and went to the mirror. Her slightly puffy eyes gave away the sleepless night, but she couldn't show weakness. She needed to be impeccable. She took a deep breath and went to the bathroom, splashing her face with cold water to fully wake up. When she came out, she found Caden still in pajamas, rubbing his eyes with a sleepy expression. "Mum, are you going to work already?" Marissa crouched and hugged him, holding him for a few moments, feeling the warmth of her son against her chest. "Yes, my love, but Aunt Vera will take care of you while I'm away." "Will you be gone long?" She smiled, trying to push away the tightness in her chest. "Not long. I'll be back soon." He nodded, still uncertain. "Do you like this new job?" Marissa hesitated for a moment. "I don't know yet, honey. But sometimes we need to try new things to find out." Caden looked at her for a few seconds, then slowly nodded. "Okay." She leaned in and kissed his forehead, before standing and grabbing her bag. "Behave with Aunt Vera, okay?" "I always behave," he replied, folding his arms. Marissa laughed and ruffled his hair before leaving. When she arrived at the mansion, she was received by Claire, who, as always, maintained a perfectly professional posture. "Good morning, Marissa. Mr. Monroe has already left for a meeting, so you'll have time to get settled and spend time with Ryan." Marissa nodded, trying to seem natural. "Is he up?" "Yes, he's having breakfast." Her stomach flipped with anxiety, but she forced herself to keep her composure as she followed Claire through the house. When they reached the dining room, Ryan sat at the table, swinging his legs while eating a slice of bread. Marissa's heart clenched seeing him there, so near and yet so far. "Good morning, Ryan." The boy lifted his eyes and studied her for a moment before answering, "Good morning." She smiled and pulled a chair next to him. "Did you sleep well?" He shrugged. "Yeah, I had a weird dream." "About what?" Ryan frowned, trying to remember. "I think I was playing with another boy, but I don't know who it was." A shiver ran down Marissa's spine. "What was he like?" "Kind of like me." Her chest tightened. Caden, could Ryan have some memory of his twin, even unconsciously? "Interesting. Maybe he's your imaginary friend." Ryan looked at her thoughtfully, but said nothing. "What are we doing today?" The boy scratched his head, hesitant. "I want to draw." "Great idea. Show me your drawings." He hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." Marissa followed Ryan to a bright, spacious room. On the table were scattered sheets of dinosaurs, superheroes, and boats. She picked up one of the drawings and felt her blood run cold. It was a boat in the middle of the ocean, tilted as if it were sinking. "Do you like drawing boats?" Ryan frowned. "I dream about it sometimes. The big sea and a boat going down." Marissa's breath faltered. He dreamed about the accident. Even without knowing, Ryan carried fragments of his real story inside him. "And what happens after?" Ryan shook his head. "I don't know. I always wake up before she swallowed hard." Have you ever been on a boat? He shook his head. Dad doesn't like them. He says he prefers planes. A chill ran down Marissa's spine. Daniel had never liked planes. He'd always preferred boats. Maybe deep down, some part of him still knew something was wrong. You know, Ryan, sometimes people have things inside them that they don't know are real memories. The boy furrowed his brow. What do you mean? She smiled, trying to play it off. Nothing. Forget it. Let's draw something else. Ryan seemed to drop the subject and grabbed another sheet. I want to draw a dinosaur now. She let out a relieved sigh and watched him concentrate on the paper, but her mind was far away. He remembered. Ryan might not know consciously, but there were signs. And if there were signs, the truth was buried, waiting to be unearthed. She just needed to find the key to free them. Marissa felt the air leave her. He was describing the accident, the boat that sank 7 years ago, the boat where Daniel disappeared. And what happens after? She asked, trying to sound casual. Ryan shrugged. I always wake up before. She swallowed hard, a shiver running through her. Have you ever been on a boat? Ryan shook his head. Dad doesn't like them. He says he prefers planes. Marissa frowned. Daniel had always loved boats, felt at peace at sea. How could someone like him suddenly avoid boats? Maybe, deep down, part of him still knew something was wrong. Trying to change the subject, she picked up another drawing, this time a giant dinosaur. This one's a T-Rex, isn't it? Ryan nodded enthusiastically. He's my favorite. My son loves dinosaurs too. He has a collection of miniatures and always says, the Velociraptor is the smartest. The boy's eyes lit with excitement. I have a collection too. I like the T-Rex, but the Velociraptor is cool because he runs fast. Marissa smiled, feeling her heart tighten. They were twins and didn't know it. What's his favorite team? The Yankees, she answered without hesitation. Ryan's eyes widened. I root for the Yankees too. She laughed softly, trying to hide how much the moment shook her. Before she could say anything more, Claire appeared at the door. Ryan, your dad is on his way home? The boy's face lit up. Is he going to play with me today? Claire hesitated for a moment. I think he's busy, sweetheart. Ryan lowered his gaze, disappointed. Marissa felt a stab in her chest. Even having been taken from her, Ryan also suffered from the absence of a truly present father. She crouched to his level and smiled. I can play with you if you want. Ryan looked surprised. Do you know how to play soccer? Of course. And I bet I'm better than you. He laughed, grabbing a ball from under the table. I want to see. Marissa followed Ryan to the yard, where he improvised a field. He set up 2 iron chairs as a goal and handed her the ball. You start in goal. She laughed and took her spot. Ryan kicked hard, but she managed to block it. Nice try, but you'll have to do better than that. He laughed and ran after the ball again. The game went on with laughs and challenges, and for a moment, Marissa forgot everything. Forgot that she couldn't hold Ryan as his mother. Forgot that Daniel didn't remember her, forgot all the pain she carried, until she felt eyes on her. When she turned, she saw Daniel standing on the porch, watching. Her heart raced. He looked at her in a strange way, as if trying to understand something he couldn't explain. She froze for an instant. Daniel's eyes analyzed every detail, as if he were trying to remember something. He cleared his throat and started walking toward them. What's going on here? Ryan ran to him, excited. We're playing soccer. Marissa is really good. Daniel raised an eyebrow and looked at her. Is that so? Marissa held his gaze. I've always liked sports. He looked at his son. I think it's time for lunch now. Ryan made a face but nodded. Okay. The boy ran inside, leaving them alone in the yard. The silence between them was tense. You handle him well, Daniel said, arms crossed. I've always been good with children, she replied, trying to keep a neutral tone. Daniel watched her for a moment, as if trying to figure something out. Do you have children? Marissa held her breath. She couldn't lie. Yes. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. How old? 6. His gaze shifted subtly. Ryan is 6 too. Her heart pounded. He was beginning to notice something. But Daniel looked away and sighed. Well, it seems Ryan likes you. Let's continue with the trial. She nodded, trying to contain her frustration. He might not know what, but he felt something was wrong, and once the truth began to reveal itself, there would be no turning back. The afternoon dragged on, as if time were playing with Marissa's emotions. After so much tension since arriving at that house, she felt each minute there was a step closer to the truth, but also a more dangerous step. After Ryan went to his room to rest, she walked down the hallway, trying to organize her thoughts. What exactly had happened in that accident? How had Yvette managed to make Daniel believe Ryan was an orphan and that she herself was his only? Reference: she knew fate had placed her there for a reason. She couldn't waste the opportunity. Then she heard voices coming from Daniel's office. Her heart sped up. The door was ajar. Carefully, she got close enough to listen without being seen. "You need to be firmer with Ryan." The woman's voice had a controlling tone, instructions disguised as advice. Marissa stiffened. It was Yvette. "He's just a child," Daniel answered, impatience in his voice. Marissa had to restrain herself from bursting in. Yvette, pretending concern, keeping Daniel under control. "I know, dear. But you need to set boundaries," Yvette insisted, with that feigned calm. Daniel's silence suggested irritation. "I've said I know how to take care of my son." There was a tense pause before Yvette replied in a theatrical tone, "Of course. I didn't mean to interfere. I just worry about you two." Marissa almost rolled her eyes. Classic manipulation, exactly the sort of thing Yvette must have used to keep them tied to her for years. She slipped away silently, blood boiling. Yvette stole her son, trapped Daniel in a lie, and still posed as protector. Marissa clenched her fists. But this would end. Later, Ryan came downstairs and found Marissa in the living room, organizing some toys. He rubbed his sleepy eyes and sat beside her on the sofa. "Who's coming to visit me?" She looked at him and tried to keep her voice calm. "A friend of your dad's." Ryan frowned. "Oh, it's Yvette." Marissa forced a smile, trying to hide the revulsion she felt hearing. That name from her own son's lips. "Do you like her?" Ryan made a face and shrugged. "She brings me presents, but she's kind of annoying." Marissa had to control herself not to laugh. "What does she do when she comes here?" He leaned his head back, thoughtful. "Talks to my dad about a bunch of boring stuff and always says I need to behave." She narrowed her eyes. "Has she ever lived here?" The boy shook his head. "No, but when I was little she came more." Marissa felt her chest tighten. Yvette had been around since Ryan was a baby. That meant she not only stole the child, she made sure Daniel never suspected anything. Marissa would need proof, and she would find it. Ryan picked up one of his dinosaurs and rolled it between his fingers. "Are you going to stay here forever?" The question caught Marissa off guard. "What do you mean?" Ryan shrugged. "Like, are you going to be my nanny forever?" Her throat tightened. "Would you like me to stay?" Ryan hesitated, then nodded. "You're nice." She forced a smile, but inside her heart ached. "But what about your son? Won't he miss you?" The air caught in Marissa's lungs. Ryan was asking about his twin without knowing it. "He will. But I come to work and then I go back home." Ryan fell silent for a while, thoughtful. "What's he like?" She swallowed. "He looks a lot like you." Ryan frowned. "Really?" She nodded. "You're the same age, the same eyes. I bet you'd get along great." The boy bit his lip as if trying to understand something that didn't make sense. After a while, he whispered, "Have you ever lost someone?" Marissa's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "Like, someone you loved a lot who disappeared." She swallowed. "Yes, I lost someone very important." Ryan lowered his gaze. "I think I lost someone too, but I don't remember who." Marissa's breath faltered. "Why do you think that?" Ryan bit his lip. "I just feel it, you know? Like something's missing." Marissa blinked fast to hold back tears. Ryan was remembering, even without understanding. Inside him, the truth was beginning to form. A wave of love crashed over her, and without thinking, she pulled Ryan into a tight hug. The boy froze for an instant, then relaxed and rested his head on her shoulder. "You remind me of someone," he whispered, closing his eyes. Marissa stood still, holding back tears. The past was returning, and when the truth came out, nothing would be the same again. Marissa's heart was still racing from what she'd heard from Ryan. The boy was beginning to show memory gaps, a sense of emptiness as if a piece of him were missing. And it was. He'd been torn from his true family and raised under a lie. She wanted to tell him everything, hold him and say he should never have been separated from his brother or his mother. But she couldn't. Not yet. Yvette was still lurking. The clock was nearing 5 when Claire announced her arrival. "Ms. Yvette is here." Marissa drew a deep breath. The time had come. She stood from the sofa and watched Ryan run excitedly to the front entrance. Marissa followed with measured steps, trying to keep her posture firm. Then she appeared. Yvette walked in through the main door in a flawless dress, brown hair neatly arranged, a carefully rehearsed smile. Her presence exuded confidence, as if that house were still hers. A chill climbed Marissa's spine. That woman seemed to own the situation, and for years she had. "My love," Yvette exclaimed upon seeing Ryan, crouching to hug him. Ryan accepted the hug, but without the same excitement he had for Daniel. He liked her, but he didn't seem attached. Marissa kept her distance, watching everything carefully. "How are you, sweetie? Did you miss me?" "Kind of," Ryan replied, distracted, fiddling with one of the buttons on her dress. Yvette let out a forced laugh and raised her gaze to Marissa. Her eyes analyzed the new nanny with curiosity. "You must be the new employee." Marissa held her gaze. "I'm Marissa." There was a beat of silence. Yvette froze. It was only a second, but Marissa noticed. That name meant something to her. But Yvette recovered quickly. The smile returned, and she extended her hand in a calculated gesture. "Yvette Parker. Pleasure." Marissa shook her hand, feeling its chill. "Pleasure's mine." They studied each other for a moment, and Marissa realized Yvette wasn't just any woman. She had control, a keen look, as if she were always one step ahead. "Did Daniel tell you about me?" Yvette asked casually. Marissa smiled slightly. "He mentioned you're close to the family." Yvette narrowed her eyes for a brief moment. "Yes, I cared for Ryan when he was little." Rage bubbled inside Marissa, but she kept her tone serene. "That explains your connection." Yvette smiled. "Yes, but it looks like he's found a new friend now." She spoke sweetly, but her eyes said something else. She was sizing Marissa up. "He's an amazing boy," Marissa replied. Yvette's eyes hardened for a moment, then softened again. "Do you have children, Marissa?" Marissa's stomach turned. Yvette was testing her. "Yes, I do." "Oh, and how old?" Marissa smiled. 6. Yvette's smile froze for a split second. She hadn't expected that answer. "What a coincidence," Yvette commented. "It is," Marissa said, holding her gaze. The silence between them was dense with tension. Marissa knew Yvette was suspicious, and that was a good sign. "Well, since I'm here, I'll spend some time with Ryan," Yvette announced. "Of course," Marissa replied without looking away. She watched Yvette take Ryan's hand and lead him inside, though the woman never took her eyes off Marissa until she disappeared down the hallway. Marissa used the moment to walk through the mansion. She needed answers. If Yvette forged documents to hide Ryan's identity, where were those records? Daniel could have clues about the past without even knowing. She decided to try the office. The door was slightly open. She entered and shut it behind her. The room was immaculate. Dark wood furniture, a huge painting of a sailboat on the wall, and shelves crammed with books. Marissa started opening drawers, searching for anything that looked personal: papers, contracts, notes. Nothing. Until she found an old envelope forgotten at the back of a drawer. The yellowed paper suggested it had been there for years. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope and found a single document inside: a birth certificate. Her heart stopped. The name on the certificate was Ryan's. But what made her hands go cold was the information below. Mother's name, Yvette Parker. Her blood boiled. She had forged the certificate. Her son had grown up believing he belonged to another woman. Marissa's fingers pressed the paper hard, but she had no time to absorb the shock. She heard a sound in the hallway. Someone was coming. Panic seized her chest. Quickly, she slipped the document back in the envelope and closed the drawer at the exact moment the door opened. Daniel walked in, frowning when he saw her there. "What are you doing here?" Marissa's heart raced. She had to think fast. She couldn't ruin everything now. The air in the room felt heavier the moment Daniel entered. Marissa froze for a brief moment, then forced a smile and tried to act naturally. The document she'd found still burned in her mind, but she needed to remain calm. "I'm sorry, Mr. Monroe. I was looking for a notepad to make an activity list for Ryan," she said, keeping her voice steady as she discreetly shut the drawer she'd opened. Daniel crossed his arms, analyzing her with a suspicious expression. His dark eyes swept the room as if searching for something out of place. "Claire could have provided that for you," he said, his tone slightly cool. Marissa kept her posture. "I know, but I thought it wouldn't be a problem if I just—" Daniel didn't seem convinced. He watched her differently now, as if trying to decipher her. "You seem very interested in Ryan's life." Marissa's heart pounded. Was he starting to suspect? She held his gaze and chose her words carefully. "I like to understand the children I work with. It's important to build a connection." He nodded slowly, still pensive. "Just be careful not to overstep, Marissa." The warning tone didn't go unnoticed. A chill ran up Marissa's spine, but she kept her composure. "Of course, Mr. Monroe." Daniel looked away and rubbed his temples, as if dealing with something that troubled him. A loaded silence hung between them until he murmured something unexpected. "It's your face." Her stomach twisted. "What about it?" Daniel frowned, as if trying to organize his thoughts. "You look familiar." Marissa's heart raced. He was remembering. But before she could answer, a sharp voice cut through the office. "What's going on here?" Marissa turned and saw Yvette in the doorway. The woman wore an elegant, flawless dress, and her eyes studied the scene with a glint of alarm. Marissa realized instantly, Yvette didn't like seeing her alone with Daniel. He looked away and stepped back slightly, as if being pulled out of a deep thought. "Nothing," he answered, voice steadier than before. "We were just talking." Yvette glanced at Marissa, and her expression left no doubt. She was suspicious. "I imagine," she murmured, a fake smile curving her lips. The silence among the three was heavy. "I was just going to check on Ryan," Marissa said, avoiding Yvette's eyes. As she left the room, she felt the woman's stare burning into her back, but she didn't turn. Her heart hammered. Daniel was beginning to have flashes of memory, but Yvette sensed it too. And if there was one thing that woman wouldn't allow, it was losing control. Marissa found Ryan on the porch, sitting on the floor and playing with a metal car. The fresh breeze gently ruffled his hair, and he seemed lost in thought. She sat beside him and watched for a moment before asking, "How was your visit with Yvette?" Ryan shrugged. "She just asked questions." Marissa frowned. "What kind of questions?" Ryan kept playing, as if uninterested. "About you." Marissa's stomach flipped. "About me?" He nodded, rolling the car along the stone floor. "She wanted to know if I like you, if you're nice." Marissa forced a smile. "And what did you say?" Ryan grinned. "That you know how to play soccer." She let out a small laugh, but inside she felt growing unease. Yvette was investigating. She knew Marissa wasn't just any nanny. Marissa moved a bit closer and spoke in a softer voice. "Do you trust her?" Ryan hesitated before answering. "I don't know. She always smiles, but I don't think she likes me much." The confession surprised Marissa. "Why do you think that?" The boy bit his lip. "She always talks like I'm a problem, like my dad gets tired of me." A wave of fury surged through Marissa. Yvette was manipulating Ryan to make him feel like a burden to Daniel. That had to stop. She held his little hand and squeezed it gently. "You are never a problem, Ryan. Your dad loves you." The boy's eyes shone with doubt. "Are you sure?" Marissa breathed deep and nodded. "Yes, and I'll prove it to you." Later, when Ryan was asleep, Marissa returned to Daniel's office. She needed to look at that birth certificate again. With quick breaths, she opened the drawer where she'd found the envelope earlier, but as soon as she looked inside, a chill ran through her body. The envelope was gone. Her. Heart raced. Someone knew she had found it. She closed her eyes for a second, thinking. Daniel hadn't touched that drawer in years. So who took the document? Footsteps in the hallway made her hold her breath. Reflexively, she shut the drawer and turned just as the door opened. Daniel entered the office, suspicion on his face. He stared, eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here?" Marissa's heart pounded. She had to think fast. If she said the wrong thing, she could lose everything. But one thing was certain, someone was one step ahead of her. Time seemed to freeze as Daniel stepped into the office. His gaze swept the room and settled on Marissa, heavy with suspicion. "What are you doing here?" Her heart raced, but her expression stayed even. She had to be quick. "I was looking for a book for Ryan," she replied, pointing to the bookshelf as naturally as she could. Daniel didn't move. His gaze stayed fixed on her, studying every detail. "Claire, could have done that for you," she gave a half smile, trying to ease the tension. "I know, but I thought I might find something more suitable if I looked myself." The silence stretched. Daniel's eyes seemed hesitant, as if he were trying to understand something he couldn't explain. "Do you always take liberties like this?" The warning was clear. Marissa knew she needed to get out without raising more suspicion. "Only when I think I can help," she answered. Calmly. Daniel kept studying her, then as if giving up the conversation, he looked away and went to his desk. Marissa took the chance to step out, ignoring the chill at her nape. Something told her he didn't fully believe her excuse. She left the office, heart pounding. The envelope had disappeared, which meant someone realized she was getting close to the truth. The next day, the routine seemed normal, but Marissa knew. The game had changed. Entering the kitchen in the morning, she found Claire setting up Ryan's breakfast. "Good morning," she greeted, grabbing a glass of water to hide her anxiety. "Good morning," Claire replied, too busy to notice Marissa's attentive look. "Do you know if Mr. Monroe was in the office last night?" The question made Claire look up, surprised. "I don't think so. He went out after you'd gone to bed and came back late." Marissa's stomach twisted. If Daniel hadn't checked that drawer, who took the envelope? Claire seemed curious. "Why?" Marissa hesitated. "Just wondered if he found what he was looking for." Claire shrugged. "If he needed something, he would have asked me." That only confirmed her suspicion. Daniel knew nothing, which left just one option. Yvette. Later, while playing with Ryan in the yard, Marissa noticed Daniel was at home. It was rare to see him there during the day, always tied up with meetings and commitments. Ryan ran to him, excited. "Dad," Daniel smiled, picked him up and hugged him with tenderness. Marissa watched, heart tight. As trapped as Daniel was in Yvette's lies, he loved Ryan, and she needed to help him remember the love he'd felt for her too. Daniel set Ryan down and then looked at Marissa. "Can we talk?" Her heart skipped. "Of course." She followed him to a more secluded corner of the garden. Daniel crossed his arms and watched her for a moment before speaking. "You're different from the other nannies I've hired." Marissa kept her gaze steady. "In what way?" He hesitated. "Ryan likes you very quickly. He doesn't get attached to just anyone." A pang hit her chest. "It's because he already knows me, even if he doesn't realize it." "I try to make him feel safe," she said. Daniel nodded, but doubt still clouded his eyes. "Yesterday, in the office." Marissa held her breath. He was still thinking about it. "You were looking for a book, right?" She nodded. "Yes." Daniel tilted his head. "Then why did you go through the drawers?" The air left her lungs. He knew. She began, mind racing to find an answer. Before she could speak, another voice cut through the garden. "Is something wrong?" Marissa felt a chill. "Yvette." The woman came across the lawn, sharp eyes analyzing them both. Daniel shut down, shaking his head. "Nothing." Yvette looked at Marissa, and a near imperceptible smile touched her lips. She knew. Marissa held her gaze, unwilling to show weakness. "Ryan's waiting for you," Yvette said to Daniel, still smiling. He sighed and nodded. "I'll go to him." He cast one last look at Marissa before walking away. As soon as he was gone, Yvette stepped closer. "You're clever," she said, low and venomous. Marissa folded her arms. "I don't know what you're talking about." Yvette's smile crooked. "Ah, you do." Marissa's heart hammered. "Where's the document?" Yvette arched a brow. "What document?" Rage rose in Marissa's throat, but she kept her voice even. "What you removed from the office last night." Yvette's smile widened. "Do you really think I'd let you ruin everything?" The truth will come out, Marissa said. Yvette chuckled softly. Daniel will never believe you. Marissa narrowed her eyes. He's already starting to remember. For the first time, Yvette's smile slipped. He'll never remember completely. I made sure of it. A chill ran through Marissa. What did you do? Yvette tilted her head, weighing whether to tell her. Do you really want to know? Marissa's chest rose and fell quickly. Yvette smiled. What Daniel forgot wasn't by accident. A shiver ran up Marissa's spine. Yvette turned and walked away, leaving her paralyzed. Daniel's memory had been erased on purpose, and now she had to find a way to restore it. Yvette's words echoed in Marissa's mind like an endless refrain. What Daniel forgot wasn't by accident. A chill ran through her. What did Yvette mean by that? If Daniel's amnesia wasn't a mere accident, it meant someone engineered the situation to ensure he never recovered his memories. But how? Marissa's heart pounded. If Daniel had been a victim of something larger, there was a chance his memories could be recovered. She no longer had any doubt. Yvette would do anything to keep him trapped in her web of lies. Marissa drew a deep breath and decided she wouldn't waste any more time. She needed to act. That night, after putting Ryan to bed, Marissa made a bold decision. She needed to search the house. She knew Yvette had taken the document that proved the forged birth certificate. But if there were other papers, any clue, anything that could help her reconstruct the past, she would find it. Barefoot to avoid noise, she moved through the mansion's corridors, lit only by a few emergency lights. Daniel's office seemed the logical first place, but after what had happened the day before, she couldn't risk being caught there again. She had to think differently. Then she remembered a detail: the guest room. That morning, while walking through the house, she noticed one of the rooms at the end of the hallway was locked. No other staff seemed to enter there. What did Daniel or Yvette keep in that room? Carefully, she followed the silent hallway to the door. She tried the handle, locked. Her heart sped up. If there was something in there they didn't want anyone to see, that was exactly where she needed to go. She looked around to make sure no one was nearby. Then, with agility she didn't know she had, slid a hairpin from her hair and worked the lock. The soft click of the latch releasing was music to her ears. She opened the door carefully and stepped into the dark room. The smell of old wood and mildew filled her nose, a rarely used space. She turned on the light, and her heart pounded at what she saw: piles of boxes and papers. Hurriedly, she began rifling through the documents: old contracts, financial records, but nothing about Ryan. She was about to give up when she saw something different, a small wooden box on the back of a shelf. With trembling hands, she pulled it closer and opened it. Her eyes widened. Inside were photos of her and Daniel. Marissa felt a knot in her throat as she looked at the images. They were old memories from when they were together, happy. One photo of them hugging by the beach, another of her pregnant, holding her belly with a radiant smile. And then, at the bottom of the box, something even more shocking: medical reports. She grabbed the yellowed page and scanned it quickly. The document was in the name of Daniel Monroe. The diagnosis: prolonged use of high-dose sedatives. Her stomach turned. Sedatives. Yvette had not only manipulated Daniel emotionally, she had drugged him for years. The pieces fell into place at once. His amnesia wasn't simply a consequence of the accident. He lost his memory because he'd been kept under controlled medication long enough to erase any recollection of the past. Shock rippled through her. Yvette had made sure he would never remember his true life. Marissa's hands trembled. She had to pull him out of this nightmare. But before she could move, a sound froze her. Footsteps in the hallway. Someone was coming. Heart racing, she switched off the light and hid behind the door. The handle turned slowly. The door opened. Marissa held her breath. A figure entered, steps careful. When the person flipped the light on, Marissa saw who it was: Daniel. He frowned at the open boxes. "What are you doing here?" Marissa's heart seemed ready to leap from her chest. She clutched the documents, searching for an answer. In that instant, she made a decision. She wouldn't lie. She drew a deep breath and lifted her eyes to him. "I found this," she said, extending the medical report. Daniel took the paper, confused, and began to read. His eyes widened. This has to be a mistake." It's not a mistake, Daniel, Marissa said, voice low but firm. You didn't lose your memory because of the accident. You were drugged. Daniel shook his head, stepping back. That doesn't make sense. Marissa stepped closer, meeting his gaze. It makes perfect sense. Yvette kept you sedated for years. She made you believe Ryan was an orphan, that your life started after the accident. But it isn't true. Daniel blinked rapidly, as if struggling to process it. This can't be real. Don't you feel something's missing? She asked softly. Don't you feel a void inside you? He swallowed. I don't know. She picked up the photos from the box and placed them in his hands. Look at these. Daniel hesitated then. His eyes fell on the images. His face paled. I know this place. His gaze swept over the photos with a mix of astonishment and dread. Marissa realized something in him was cracking. Walls Yvette had built were starting to crumble. You need to trust me, she whispered. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, breathing unevenly. This can't be true. But his expression said the opposite. The truth was seeping in, and Yvette wouldn't be able to stop it, for much longer. Daniel gripped the photos, eyes wide as he studied them. His hands trembled. He seemed unable to process what he saw. This can't be real, he murmured, as if trying to convince himself. Marissa kept her voice steady. It's real. These photos are yours. Ours. He blinked, as if fighting something inside. His breath came ragged, chest rising and falling hard. It doesn't make sense. I would have remembered. Wouldn't I? Someone made sure you wouldn't, Marissa replied. Daniel lifted his eyes to her, doubt plain in them. You're saying someone drugged me? Yes. And you know who? He closed his eyes for a moment, fingers pressing into his temples as if his head might split. Yvette. The name left his mouth like a hoarse whisper. Marissa seized the hesitation. Think, Daniel. You always trusted her. But why? Do you remember the day you met her? He opened his eyes suddenly. The confusion gave way to something deeper. He tried to pull a memory but couldn't. I don't remember. The silence stretched. Daniel blinked a few times, as if the idea of not remembering was more terrifying than anything Marissa had said. How is that possible? Marissa stepped closer and lightly touched his arm. Because she controlled you all this time. She gave you pills. She created a new story for you, and you believed it because it was all your mind could access. Daniel swallowed, turning away as if needing distance. He paced the room, raking a hand through his hair, breathing hard. This is insane. Marissa sighed. I know it sounds that way. But you have to trust me. He spun on his heel, eyes blazing. Trust you. I don't even know who you are. The words struck her like a blow, but she refused to back down. You do know me, Daniel. Your mind may have forgotten, but your heart hasn't. He shut his eyes again, as if wanting to escape the conversation, but his breathing gave away the turmoil inside. I need time, he said, voice shaking. Marissa wanted to insist, to cry that there was no more time, but she knew she had to be patient. If she pushed too hard, she could drive him further from the truth. All right, she said softly. He left the room without looking back. Marissa's legs weakened. The truth was before him, but would he have the courage to accept it? That night Marissa couldn't sleep. She turned over and over, replaying every word she'd spoken, every reaction Daniel had. Her instincts told her he wanted to believe, but something in him still fought it. And the biggest problem had a name, Yvette. She would notice he was shaken, and if she'd done so much to keep him trapped in that lie, what would she do when she realized she was about to lose him? The thought made a shiver run through Marissa. She needed to act. The next morning, Daniel didn't come down for breakfast. Claire said he'd left early without saying where. Yvette, on the other hand, acted as if nothing had happened. She entered with that same fake smile, pretending interest in Ryan while her eyes scanned the house. But Marissa knew what she was doing, looking for Daniel. When Yvette finally looked at Marissa, there was a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. Did you sleep well? Marissa held her gaze. Yes. And you? Yvette smiled but didn't answer. It was Ryan who broke the silence. Did Dad go on a trip? Yvette turned to him, blinking as if not expecting the question. What did you say, sweetie? Dad left really early. Do you know where he went? Yvette froze for a second, then slowly forced a smile. Oh, honey, he probably went to handle business. Ryan frowned. But he didn't tell me. Don't worry about that, sweetheart. Marissa watched every detail. Yvette was trying to hide that she was worried, which meant she didn't know where Daniel was. And if Daniel had gone to uncover the truth on his own, hope sparked inside Marissa. But Yvette wouldn't take long to act. She looked at Ryan and forced another rehearsed smile. How about we go out today, my love? Just you and me? Alarms blared in Marissa's mind. Ryan, however, didn't seem very excited. I don't know. I think I want to stay home. Yvette tilted her head, still smiling. Are you sure? We could go for ice cream. I don't want to, Ryan answered, not looking at her. Irritation flashed in Yvette's eyes for a fraction of a second before she composed herself. All right then. She turned to Marissa. Can we talk? Marissa held her gaze. Sure. The two left the room and walked to a quieter hallway. When they were far enough not to be heard, Yvette stopped and crossed her arms. I don't know what you're trying to do, but it won't work. Marissa arched a brow. And what exactly am I trying to do? Yvette smiled coldly. You're trying to open Daniel's eyes. Marissa kept her posture firm. He's opening them on his own. No, you're forcing it. But let me tell you something, dear. I built this lie for 7 years. Do you think you can undo it in a few days? Marissa stepped forward, eyes blazing. The truth always comes out. Yvette tilted her head, assessing her. Do you think Daniel will believe you? Marissa smiled. He already started. For the first time, Yvette showed a trace of worry, but in a blink, her expression was controlled again. We'll see, she said simply. She turned and left, leaving Marissa alone. But Marissa knew something was different this time. Yvette was losing control. And when Daniel came back, nothing would be the same. Marissa watched Yvette walk away, but she didn't relax. The woman was unsettled. Her mask had begun to crack for the first time, which meant the game was changing. Daniel was beginning to doubt, and Yvette knew that if she lost control, she'd lose everything. Marissa closed her eyes for a moment and breathed deeply. She knew the situation was getting more dangerous, but she also knew she couldn't. Back down now. The noose was tightening. Her heart sped up, thinking where Daniel might be. He had left early and told no one. If he was searching for answers, she couldn't just sit and wait. She had to be ready. The day crawled by. Ryan spent much of the time playing in the yard, and Marissa stayed close, attentive to Yvette's every move. The woman tried to hide it, but she was restless, calling someone constantly, speaking in a low voice, looking around to be sure no one heard. She was trying to find where Daniel had gone, and that confirmed Marissa's suspicion. Daniel knew something was wrong, and for the first time he hadn't run to Yvette for answers. The sun was setting when the unexpected happened. A car pulled up in the drive. Marissa turned immediately. Daniel was back, but he wasn't alone. Marissa felt her blood run cold when she recognized the woman with him. Dr. Helen Vasquez, the neurologist who had treated Daniel after the accident. Marissa's heart raced. Daniel had gone after his medical history, and if he brought Dr. Helen, it was because he'd found something. The mansion fell silent. Everyone stopped when Daniel walked in with the doctor. Ryan, who had been playing near the pool, ran to his father. Dad! Daniel crouched and wrapped his son in a tight hug. Tighter than usual, as if for the first time he felt he had to protect him from something. Marissa watched, holding her breath. Yvette appeared in the room, eyes wide when she saw who stood beside Daniel. She tried to hide the shock but couldn't. What's going on? She asked, trying to sound calm. Daniel stood and looked directly at her. I was at the hospital this morning. The silence that followed was cutting. Marissa saw Yvette's hand twitch at her side. At the hospital? Daniel nodded slowly. I went for my medical records. Yvette's face remained impassive, but Marissa saw her blink too fast. Why? Yvette asked with a tight smile. Daniel took a deep breath and pulled an envelope from his pocket. Because I wanted to know why I never remember anything before the accident. He handed the envelope to Dr. Helen, who opened it and pulled out several papers. Mr. Monroe came to me early today, the doctor began. He wanted to understand why his memories never returned, even after so much time. Yvette let out a forced laugh. But that's normal. Some people never recover fully. Yes, Helen interrupted, but there's something unusual in his case. Marissa saw Yvette's face pale. What? Helen held up one of the papers. Your tests show that over the last several years, you received frequent doses of benzodiazepines and other sedatives. The impact was devastating. Marissa held her breath. Daniel went still. Yvette turned completely white. That doesn't make sense, Daniel murmured, eyes on the documents. Helen looked at him seriously. It does. You were medicated continuously for a long period. That can explain your difficulty recovering past memories. The silence was absolute. Then Daniel turned slowly to Yvette. Did you know about this? The woman blinked, mouth opening and closing as she tried to form a response. Of course not. This must be a mistake. It's not a mistake, Helen countered. These drugs were in your bloodstream for years. Someone gave them to you without your knowledge. Daniel turned pale. Marissa watched every detail. Yvette couldn't hide her nerves now. She tried to step forward, but Daniel recoiled. Daniel, you can't believe this. But he already did. The pieces were falling into place. Who gave me the pills, Helen? Daniel blinked quickly, as if his mind were rushing to find answers. He stopped and then looked at Yvette. You, he whispered. Yvette's eyes widened. What? You were always with me. You always brought my meds, told me what to take, her eyes filled with desperation. Are you accusing me of something? Daniel clenched his fists. You drugged me. His voice came low, heavy with pain. Yvette stepped back. No, I would never. But her voice faltered, and then, in the middle of all that chaos, a small, innocent voice echoed through the room. You always told me Dad got tired because of me. Everyone turned. Ryan stood there, watching with a confused, frightened look. Yvette froze. What? Ryan frowned. You always said he got sick because of me. Daniel's look darkened. You said that to my son. Yvette stood, paralyzed. Ryan lowered his head. I don't like her, Dad. The floor seemed to vanish. Daniel stared at Yvette, fury rising. She opened her mouth to speak, but couldn't. Get out of my house, Daniel ordered, voice like ice. Yvette stood still, as if she couldn't believe what she'd heard. Daniel, now. The silence was suffocating. Slowly, Yvette understood. She had lost. Her eyes flashed with hate, but she had no way out. For the first time, Marissa saw fear in them. Yvette stepped back, then, without another word, turned and left. The door shut with a dull thud, and the whole house fell silent. Daniel ran a hand over his face, the weight of years of lies finally hitting him. He looked at Marissa, and in that look, the memory of everything began to awaken. The hush after Yvette's departure seemed to echo through the house. The weight of the revelation still hung in the air, as if no one knew what to do next. Daniel stood still for a few moments, breathing, heavily, eyes fixed on the ground as if trying to process everything. Marissa's heart raced. He was on the verge of remembering. Ryan stayed beside his father, holding his hand tight. It was the little one who broke the silence. Dad, are you okay? Daniel blinked and looked at his son. Seeing the boy's worried eyes, he crouched and pulled Ryan into a tight hug. I'm okay, son. I promise. Ryan buried his face in his father's shoulder, seeking safety. Marissa watched, eyes misty. Ryan didn't fully understand the gravity of what had happened, but he could feel something had changed. Daniel sighed and looked at Marissa. I need some time. She nodded. Of course. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly shaken. Dr. Helen, who had stayed nearby, spoke up. Daniel, now that we know your amnesia may have been induced, it's possible to try to recover your memories. He looked at her, hesitant. How? Helen crossed her arms. Your mind blocked many memories, because it was kept in a state of sedation. Now that you're no longer under medication, it's possible your memory will begin to reactivate on its own. And if it doesn't? He asked, voice uncertain. Helen sighed. We can try stimuli, therapy, exposure to familiar places and objects, even guided hypnosis. Marissa saw him tense. Hypnosis isn't what it sounds like, Helen explained. We're not talking about manipulation, but a controlled process to access parts of your subconscious. Daniel looked uneasy. What if I don't want to remember? Marissa held her breath. He was afraid of what he'd find, afraid of what the truth might mean. She took a step forward, her voice gentle. Daniel, do you really want to live without knowing who you are? He looked at her, and something changed in his eyes. Are you sure you know me? He asked, hesitant. The question made her chest tighten. She nodded. I am. Daniel wet his lips, clearly unsettled. And what were we? She swallowed. Do you want to know the truth? He nodded slowly. Marissa took a breath. It was time. You were my husband, Daniel. His eyes widened slightly. What? Her heart raced. We were married. We loved each other. Daniel went pale. That can't be true. Marissa's eyes burned. You know it is. Your heart knows. He took a step back, breathing fast. I need to think. And then, without another word, he turned and left. Marissa didn't sleep that night. With every minute, the anguish grew. Ryan slept peacefully, oblivious to the chaos swirling around him, but Marissa couldn't relax. Daniel had run from the truth. He needed time. But what if he never accepted it? What if he chose to go on without remembering? The thought crushed her. In the morning, Claire appeared with a worried look. Mr. Monroe left very early. A chill hit Marissa. Did he say where he was going? No, just took the car and left. Her heart tightened. Daniel was searching for answers. She could only hope he found the right ones. Hours later, Marissa was in the living room when a car pulled up out front. She rushed to the door and saw Daniel get out. He wasn't alone. He carried an envelope. The look he gave her was different. No more hesitance, only certainty. Marissa felt the air leave her lungs. I found our records, he said, voice low but firm. Her legs wobbled. He entered, running his fingers over the envelope. Then he spoke, in a tone that made her heart stop. I saw our marriage certificate. A tear escaped Marissa. Daniel drew a breath. I saw our wedding photo. I saw everything. He lifted his eyes to her and finally, said the words she'd waited 6 years to hear. I remember you, Marissa. Emotion exploded inside her. Daniel's eyes were filled with tears. I remember you. I remember us. Marissa brought her hands to her mouth, a sob escaping. He stepped forward and took her hands. I don't know how I could ever forget you. She closed her eyes, tears streaming down. You came back. Daniel pulled her into his arms and held her tight, as if he never wanted to let her go. And she knew. The past had finally found its way home. The warmth of Daniel's embrace still burned. On Marissa's skin, a comforting heat she hadn't felt in 7 years. But as powerful as that moment was, a cruel reality hit them like an icy gust. Yvette hadn't lost yet. When Daniel pulled back, his eyes were filled with confusion and certainty at once. I remember you, Marissa. But there are still holes, things I can't fill in. She held his hands firmly, pouring all the reassurance she could. You'll remember. Now that the truth has begun to surface, nothing can stop it. He nodded, but his face remained troubled. I need to see Ryan. Marissa smiled, even with her heart tight. He's in the yard. Daniel hurried out and she followed, her chest full of hope and apprehension. Ryan played, pushing a toy car along the stone path. When he sensed his father's presence, he smiled and ran to him. Dad. Daniel crouched and scooped him into a hug. But not an ordinary hug. It was one of reunion, relief, a silent promise. Ryan nestled into his chest and closed his eyes for a moment. I love you, Dad. Daniel swallowed, the words striking straight at his heart. I love you too, son. So much Marissa felt tears sting her eyes. They were rebuilding. But before she could let herself relax, Daniel's phone rang. He frowned, pulling it from his pocket. Unknown number. A chill climbed Marissa's spine. Answer it. Daniel swiped and lifted the phone to his ear. Hello? Silence on the other end lasted only a second. Then the voice that followed made Marissa's blood run cold. Hello, my love. Daniel froze. Yvette. He growled the name. Marissa's heart kicked. She was back. Did you think you could get rid of me that easily? Yvette's voice was cool, laced with dangerous venom. Daniel's face hardened. I've discovered everything. It's over, Yvette. Her laugh was low and cutting. No, darling, it's not over yet. Daniel stiffened. What do you want? The silence was agonizing, and then Yvette's words hit like a punch. I have Caden. The world stopped. The air vanished. The ground disappeared beneath Marissa's feet. What? Her voice came strangled. Daniel's eyes flew wide, stunned. You're lying, he said, though his voice shook. Am I? Yvette laughed. I told you, you never should have crossed my path again. But you insisted. Now deal with the consequences. Daniel's voice roared, fury taking over. Where is he? Where is your son? Yvette sighed theatrically. After all we've been through, do you think I'll make this easy? Marissa's hands trembled. The woman had snapped. For God's sake, he has nothing to do with this. He has everything to do with it. He's your son, and you need to learn you can't just take back everything you lost. Daniel's fists clenched. What do you want? Yvette laughed again, darker this time. A meeting, tonight, at the old pier. No cops, just the three of us. A shiver ran down Marissa. The pier where the accident happened. Why there? Daniel asked, suspicious. Because I want the end of this story to happen exactly where it began. Marissa met Daniel's eyes. If you try anything, I swear you'll never see Caden again. Marissa's heart squeezed. I want to talk to him. The silence dragged for endless seconds, then a weak, crying voice came on the line. Mom? Marissa choked on a sob. Son, I'm here. Are you okay? I'm scared. His voice broke. Rage surged through Marissa like fire. Yvette, if you lay a finger on him, I swear. She cut in. Careful what you say. Do you want me to keep my promise? Marissa's hatred was so intense, her vision darkened for a moment. We'll be there, Daniel said, voice steeped in threat. Yvette smiled on the line. Good. See you soon. The call ended. Marissa stood. Paralyzed, Daniel's phone still in her hand. Her legs threatened to give out, her whole body shaking. Daniel gripped her shoulders, trying to steady her. We'll get our son back. I promise. She looked at him, the fury burning in her chest like an uncontrollable flame. If Yvette thinks we'll walk into her trap, she's dead wrong. Daniel nodded. We'll end this. Marissa drew a deep breath. If this was Yvette's last gambit, they had to be ready for anything. Night would fall in. Just a few hours, and when it did, Yvette's reign of terror would end. Time seemed to move differently. Each minute dragged, even as night approached too fast. The meeting was set. Daniel and Marissa couldn't make a single mistake. Caden depended on them. After they ended the call, they stood in silence for a moment, the weight of it crushing them. Daniel was the first to move. We need a plan. Marissa nodded, still trembling. Caden was in Yvette's hands. She had never been so afraid. She wants us to go alone, Daniel said, thinking. But if we try anything, she might… Marissa shut her eyes, trying to control her breath. She had to think. What if we have discreet backup? Daniel arched a brow. You want to involve the police? If we go alone, she could do something worse. What if we have a containment plan? He pondered, then picked up the phone. I know someone who can help. Minutes later, Daniel had found a trusted contact inside the police, someone who agreed to stay nearby and not interfere unless necessary. We can't spook her, Daniel reinforced. If she senses anything off, she could run with Caden. Marissa swallowed. Yvette was desperate. She'd stop at nothing to keep control. They left for the old pier just before 11. The location was isolated, away from the city center, surrounded by dark water and abandoned warehouses, the same place where, 7 years earlier, Daniel had been declared dead. The car stopped a few yards from the pier, and a chill ran down Marissa's spine. The cold night wind howled around them, making the light poles creak. The silence was absolute. She wasn't there yet. Stay alert, Daniel murmured. Marissa clenched her fists. Minutes passed, then an engine cut through the night. Headlights pierced the darkness. A black car stopped a few yards away, and Marissa's blood ran cold when the rear door opened. Yvette stepped out, posture flawless, hair in a tight bun, eyes cold as ice, and then she pulled Caden out. The boy was scared, hands tied in front of him, but alive. Marissa wanted to run to him, but Daniel grabbed her arm. It was a dangerous game. "I'm glad you came," Yvette said, voice dripping venom. Caden looked at Marissa, eyes full of tears. "Mum." Her chest clenched. "It's okay, my love. We're getting you out of here." Yvette smiled, satisfied. "Ah, that depends." Daniel gritted his teeth. "What do you want?" Yvette sighed. "Just a deal." "What kind of deal?" he asked, arms crossed. "I'll let Caden go if you leave forever." Marissa frowned. "What are you talking about?" Yvette looked at Daniel. "You disappeared once. You can disappear again. This time with your dear wife and your kids. Go far away and leave me with what's mine." "You're insane," Daniel snarled. Yvette's smile grew. "You have no choice. If you say no, well, Caden could have an accident." An overwhelming rage took Marissa. This woman had no limits. "You're surrounded, Yvette. There's nowhere to run." Her eyes flashed. "Want to bet?" Marissa swallowed. Yvette wasn't bluffing. "Let my son go," Marissa demanded, stepping forward. Yvette laughed low and squeezed Caden's arm. The boy whimpered. "Not so fast, dear." "We're still negotiating." Daniel stepped forward, voice deep and steady. "You have no way out, Yvette." She tilted her head. "Oh, but I do." And then, before anyone could react, she pulled a gun. Marissa's heart stopped. Daniel immediately raised his hands. "You don't need to do this, Yvette." Her eyes glittered with something unhinged. You don't understand, do you? I gave 7 years to this. I rebuilt you, Daniel." "You destroyed me," he said. Yvette laughed, a trembling, unhinged laugh. "You never would have been happy without me. I did everything for you, and now you want to abandon me?" "You destroyed my family," Marissa said, voice full of fury. Yvette swung, the gun toward her. "Stay where you are." Caden whimpered. "Please don't hurt my mum." That made Yvette falter, and it was all Daniel needed. He lunged. It happened fast. A split second of distraction, he grabbed Yvette's wrist. "Drop the gun," she screamed, fighting, but Daniel was stronger. Marissa ran and pulled Caden away. He clung to her, trembling. "It's okay, my love. I'm here." A gunshot cracked the night. Marissa froze. Yvette fell, clutching her shoulder as a thin line of blood seeped out. Police emerged from the shadows, weapons trained. "Drop the gun," an officer ordered. Yvette breathed hard, eyes wild. This can't be happening. Officers swarmed, immobilizing and cuffing her. Daniel turned, eyes finding Marissa and Caden. He dropped to his knees before them and embraced them both. "It's over." Marissa cupped his face in her hands, tears streaming. "You came back to us." Daniel smiled, exhausted, but finally free. "I never should have left." The nightmare ended there, and now they could begin again. Together. The silence after Yvette's arrest was deafening. The cold wind swept across the pier, rocking the dark waters below, as if trying to carry away all the ghosts of that night. Slowly, the sounds of the world returned. Hurried footsteps of officers, murmured orders, the clink of cuffs closing around Yvette's wrists. But for Marissa, only one sound mattered. Caden's crying in her arms. She held him as if she'd never let go. His small body trembled, his sobs echoing softly in her ear. "Mom," he murmured, voice weak. "I'm here, my love." "I'm here," she whispered back, tears wetting her face. Daniel knelt beside them, eyes misted, full of a love that had been stolen for so long. He raised a trembling hand and stroked the boy's hair. "You're safe, son. We'll never let anything happen to you again." Caden sobbed and hugged his father. For the first time, Daniel closed his eyes and let himself feel it, absorbing every second of the embrace he hadn't even known he always needed. Then small footsteps echoed on the pier. Ryan climbed out of the car and ran to them, anxious. He stopped beside Caden, and for a moment the two simply stared at each other. Ryan moved first. He held out his hand. "I'm your brother." The air left Marissa's lungs. Caden blinked a few times, as if he needed to process the words. Then, slowly, he took Ryan's hand. "I know." They looked at each other for a few seconds more, and then Ryan pulled him into a hug. In that instant, something inside Marissa finally broke. Their children were together. At last, they were where they belonged. Daniel lifted his eyes to Marissa. He didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. Everything she needed was right there. The days that followed were intense. Yvette's arrest made news everywhere. Police gathered all the evidence against her: the sabotage of Daniel's boat, the forgery of Ryan's documents, the continuous sedation to keep him from remembering his true life, and finally, Caden's kidnapping. There was no escape. Yvette tried to defend herself, claiming she did it all for love, that she only wanted to protect Daniel from a painful past. No one believed her. Days passed, and life in the Monroe mansion began to change. Marissa noticed Daniel had become more present with the boys. Every morning he insisted on having breakfast with them, asking about their dreams, listening to their stories. One afternoon she found them in the yard playing soccer with Daniel. Ryan laughed out loud when Caden tried to dribble past his dad and almost succeeded. She stopped and watched for a moment, her chest filling with emotion. Daniel noticed her and smiled. "Want to join us?" She laughed and folded her arms. "I don't want to add to the humiliation you're already suffering." Ryan laughed. "Mom's good at soccer, Dad." Caden nodded, laughing too. "It's true." Daniel arched a challenging eyebrow. "Oh yeah? Then let's see." He kicked the ball toward her. Marissa raised an eyebrow and without effort trapped it with a quick touch. The boys cheered. "I told you," Ryan shouted. Daniel smiled and crossed his arms. "Looks like I need a few lessons." Marissa smiled back. They were becoming a real family. A few weeks later, Daniel made a definitive decision. That morning, he called Marissa for a talk in the yard. Sunlight fell softly on the grass, and the air felt charged with something new. Daniel drew a deep breath before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot." Marissa frowned. "About what?" He looked at the boys playing ahead. "About what we want for our future, what we left behind and where we should go now." She stayed quiet, waiting for him to continue. He met her eyes. "I want to leave this house behind. I want us to start anew, no ghosts, no bad memories." Marissa's heart sped up. "You want to move?" Daniel nodded. "It doesn't make sense to stay. I want to take the family somewhere we can truly be happy." A lump rose in her throat. "Where do you want to go?" His smile was gentle. "Back to where we began." Her eyes misted. "You want to return to our town?" He took her hands. "I want to rebuild our life there. I want to see the boys grow up near the ocean, like we always dreamed. I want a real home, without shadows from the past." She looked at the boys, now bonded as inseparable brothers, then back at Daniel, and she knew there was no other choice. "Let's go home." Daniel's smile widened. He laced his fingers with hers, sealing the promise of a new beginning. And so they left behind everything that had made them suffer, because what mattered most was never where they were, but who they were with. At last, their family was complete.